The Grand Hall of Unity, located on the verdant moon of Azura Prime, buzzed with activity. Delegates from hundreds of advanced civilizations gathered under the shimmering crystalline dome, each representing their homeworld in the Galactic Alliance. The matter at hand was dire. The Eryndor Swarm, a bioengineered species gone rogue, had decimated several star systems and threatened to engulf the galaxy. Despite the urgency, the meeting's atmosphere was tinged with tension. The Galactic Alliance prided itself on centuries of peaceful coexistence. Yet even its most advanced technologies and unified military forces had failed to suppress the Eryndor threat. A desperate proposal was now on the table, the potential recruitment of an unaligned species to aid in the battle. That species was humanity. Ambassador Grelthar, a towering crystalline being whose body refracted light into a dazzling spectrum, addressed the assembly.
Members of the Alliance, we stand on the brink of annihilation. The Eryndor Swarm grows stronger with every passing moment. Our finest minds have concluded that our conventional strategies are insufficient. We must seek allies beyond our Federation, however unorthodox they may seem.
The chamber erupted into murmurs. Whispers of skepticism and cautious intrigue rippled through the crowd. Many had heard of Earth, the small blue planet in a remote spiral arm of the Milky Way. Its inhabitants were technologically primitive by galactic standards, but their rapid development over the past century had caught the Alliance's attention. An amphibious delegate, Ambassador Villith of the Morkellans, rose to speak.
Humans are an unpredictable and volatile species. Their history is rife with conflict and self-destruction. Are we truly prepared to invite such chaos into our midst?
Ambassador Elcor, a feline-like creature with sleek silver fur, countered.
And yet their resilience is unmatched. They have emerged from countless wars, not just surviving but thriving. Their ingenuity and adaptability are qualities we cannot afford to ignore.
The debate raged on for hours. Some argued that humans were too dangerous, citing their propensity for violence and their brief but destructive foray into nuclear weaponry. Others pointed to humanity's cultural achievements, their capacity for cooperation, and their relentless curiosity as evidence of their potential to contribute positively. Finally, High Chancellor Zytriel, a luminescent, winged being who presided over the Alliance, raised a hand to silence the chamber. Her voice resonated with authority and wisdom.
Enough. The decision has been made. We will send a delegation of scholars to Earth to assess the suitability of its inhabitants for the Galactic Alliance and the battle against the Eryndor Swarm. Their mission will be to observe, evaluate, and report back. Only then will we determine humanity's role.
The council adjourned, and a select group of scholars was assembled. The team was a mix of disciplines, chosen for their expertise in xenopsychology, history, diplomacy, and warfare. At its head was Zarnal, a celebrated historian known for his impartiality, and Vrayx, a xenopsychologist with a reputation for understanding even the most enigmatic species. As the scholars prepared to embark on their mission, unease lingered among the delegates. No one could predict what they would find on Earth, or how humanity might react to the knowledge of their evaluation. The stakes were higher than they had ever been before, and the survival of the galaxy could hinge on the decision they were about to make. For Zarnal and Vrayx, the mission was clear: uncover the truth about humanity. What made them so resilient? What drove their contradictory nature? And most importantly, could they be trusted to fight alongside the Alliance without endangering the very peace they sought to protect? As the scholars' sleek cloaked vessel disappeared into hyperspace toward the distant blue world, the weight of their task settled heavily upon them. Little did they know that their discoveries would not only change the fate of the galaxy, but also force the Alliance to confront its own moral failings. The scholars' vessel, a sleek and nearly imperceptible craft designed for deep cover reconnaissance, emerged from hyperspace in the shadow of Earth's moon. From their vantage point, the planet appeared as a vibrant sphere of swirling blues, greens, and whites. Its beauty was undeniable, but the scholars were not there to admire the view. They had a mission to uncover the truth about humanity. Zarnal stood at the observation deck, his 6 shimmering eyes scanning the surface of the planet below.
Such a world of contradictions,
he murmured, his voice resonating softly in the chamber.
A cradle of both immense destruction and unparalleled creativity. It is unlike any we have studied before.
Vrakes, seated at a console, adjusted the cloaking device to ensure their presence remained undetected.
We must tread carefully.
She warned, her voice tinged with caution.
Humans have a history of hostility toward the unknown. Our presence here must remain a secret.
The vessel's artificial intelligence, an advanced construct named LX-72, provided a briefing.
Atmospheric conditions optimal. Primary observation targets identified based on key areas of human activity, political centers, conflict zones, cultural hubs, and rural regions for baseline behavioral studies.
The team had divided into specialized units to maximize their understanding of humanity. The historical team, led by Zarnal, would study human history and analyze patterns of conflict and cooperation. The behavioral team, led by Vrakes, would observe humans in their everyday lives, focusing on their interpersonal relationships and emotional responses. The tactical team, composed of military strategists, would examine human warfare capabilities and strategies through simulations and archival research. Disguised probes carrying advanced cloaking and sensory technology descended toward the planet. The probes embedded themselves in various locations, bustling cities, remote villages, military bases, and diplomatic halls. Through these devices, the scholars could observe humanity in real time, capturing the essence of human life without interference. Zarnal's team began by examining historical archives, infiltrating digital repositories to access records of human history. They delved into the chronicles of ancient wars, revolutions, and the rise and fall of empires. They studied texts like The Art of War by Sun Tzu, the treaties of the Geneva Conventions, and records of monumental conflicts like the World Wars. Each layer they uncovered deepened the paradox. Humanity's greatest advancements often emerged during or immediately following its darkest moments. Meanwhile, Vrakes' team focused on the intricacies of human behavior. They placed observation nodes in family homes, workplaces, and public spaces, analyzing the subtle nuances of human interaction. They noted moments of kindness and collaboration juxtaposed with acts of aggression and cruelty. A particular incident in a small rural town caught Vrakes' attention. A group of strangers coming together to rescue a trapped animal. It was a striking display of empathy, but why did such compassion coexist with their penchant for violence? The tactical team's exploration was perhaps the most alarming. They infiltrated military training grounds and observed active conflict zones through their cloaked drones. Humans displayed an innate understanding of strategy and improvisation, often turning disadvantageous situations into victories through sheer determination. One startling observation came from a live battlefield where a human unit, vastly outnumbered, executed a daring ambush that defied all conventional logic.
"They are terrifyingly efficient,"
remarked Kalor, a tactical expert.
"But it is not just their efficiency. It is the emotional charge behind their actions. They fight as if the survival of their very soul depends on it."
After weeks of observation, the scholars reconvened aboard their vessel to discuss their findings. Zarnal summarized the duality they had witnessed.
Humans are a species driven by passion. Their emotions are not a hindrance but a force multiplier. Yet, this same passion makes them unpredictable.
Vrakes added her concerns.
Their history suggests they are capable of remarkable unity, but only in the face of existential threats. Without such pressure, they often turn their aggression inward, fracturing into countless factions.
Kalor, the military strategist, spoke last.
"Their potential as warriors is undeniable. However, their unpredictability makes them a double-edged sword. If unleashed on the galaxy, they could either be its savior or its undoing."
As the scholars contemplated their next steps, an unanticipated event occurred. One of their observation probes had been discovered by a group of humans, a retired soldier, a journalist, and an engineer, who quickly realized its alien origins. The humans' reactions varied: excitement, fear, and curiosity. For the scholars, this encounter posed a critical question. What would happen if humanity learned of the Galactic Alliance and its war against the Eryndor Swarm? Unbeknownst to the scholars, this chance discovery would set in motion a chain of events that would test the very foundation of their mission and the Alliance's assumptions about humanity. The scholars were now deeply immersed in their study of humanity, splitting their efforts between cultural analysis, psychological profiling, and historical observation. From their cloaked vessel in Earth's orbit, They pieced together a mosaic of contradictions that defined the human species. Arnold convened a briefing in the observation chamber where holographic projections of Earth's landscapes and events flickered in midair.
Our findings continue to defy conventional logic,
He began, gesturing to a rotating display of human achievements and atrocities.
They are a species capable of creating symphonies that stir the soul, and weapons that shatter worlds. Their civilizations reach for the stars while their wars burn their own lands. How can such opposing forces coexist within one species?
Vrakes nodded in agreement, her expression contemplative.
Their duality is not an anomaly, but a defining trait. It seems to stem from their survival instincts. Humanity's emotional depth fuels both their capacity for violence and their pursuit of peace.
The team decided to delve deeper, focusing on three distinct areas: the cultural expressions of humanity's duality, their psychological resilience, and the catalysts for their most extreme behaviors. The scholars immersed themselves in Earth's vast cultural tapestry, analyzing art, literature, and entertainment. They discovered stories of heroes and villains, love and loss, creation and destruction. In one instance, they examined the works of William Shakespeare, whose plays like Hamlet and Macbeth delved into the complexities of human ambition, guilt, and morality. At the same time, they studied modern media, including blockbuster films and video games, which glorified both heroic sacrifice and spectacular destruction.
What fascinates me,
Arnold said, observing a montage of human war films,
is their ability to romanticize war as both noble and horrific. They seem to understand the tragedy of violence, yet they cannot look away from its allure.
The behavioral team added another layer of insight.
Humans use art and storytelling to process their conflicting emotions.
Vrakes explained.
Their war stories are not merely entertainment, they are a way to reconcile their internal struggles.
The behavioral team also studied human psychology, examining their response to trauma and adversity. The scholars infiltrated medical archives, accessing records of soldiers who had survived harrowing wars. They were astonished to find that many of these individuals, despite their suffering, demonstrated remarkable resilience and even sought to help others heal. In one case, they observed a human veteran named Maria, who had lost her family in a war. Instead of succumbing to despair, she dedicated her life to advocating for peace and supporting other survivors.
This is what sets humans apart,
Vrakes noted.
Their pain does not merely break them, it often drives them to seek meaning and purpose.
Kaylor, however, saw a darker side.
For every Maria, there is another who succumbs to hatred and revenge. Their resilience is a double-edged sword. It can lead to remarkable progress or unimaginable destruction.
The scholars sought to understand what pushed humans toward either extreme war or peace. They identified patterns in their history where moments of crisis often served as turning points. The behavioral team studied the aftermath of World War II, noting how the horrors of that conflict led to the establishment of the United Nations and a renewed focus on diplomacy and human rights. At the same time, the tactical team examined the Cold War, where the threat of annihilation spurred both an arms race and a space race, resulting in both nuclear stockpiles and the moon landing.
It appears that humans thrive under pressure.
Zarnal concluded during a debriefing.
When faced with existential threats, they innovate and cooperate, but when the pressure subsides, they often revert to infighting.
As the scholars synthesized their findings, a theory began to emerge.
Humanity's duality was not a flaw, but an evolutionary adaptation. Their capacity for violence ensured survival in times of danger, while their longing for peace allowed them to build civilizations. This duality makes them uniquely dangerous,
Kaylor argued.
They could bring unparalleled chaos to the galaxy, or unparalleled hope.
Vrakes countered.
Perhaps their contradictions are precisely what we need. They may understand balance in a way we cannot.
Zarnal remained neutral, his mind turning over the complexities of their observations.
If we are to make a fair assessment,
he said,
we must not only observe but also understand their motivations. What drives humans to fight and what compels them to seek peace? Until we answer these questions, our mission remains incomplete.
The scholars expanded their efforts, embedding probes in conflict zones and peaceful communities alike. They began to notice a startling trend. Humans often viewed peace not as the absence of conflict, but as something worth fighting for. In the words of a human poet they studied.
The price of peace is eternal vigilance.
For Zarnal,
This realization raised another question: if humanity were introduced to the Galactic Alliance and its ongoing war, which side of their nature would prevail? Would they become the galaxy's saviors or its greatest threat?
as the team delved deeper, the answers they sought would soon challenge not only their understanding of humanity, but also the very fabric of the Alliance itself. Zarnal and his team immersed themselves in humanity's history, focusing on the archives of war. They accessed Earth's digital repositories, combing through centuries of data from ancient tribal skirmishes to the mechanized slaughter of the 20th century and the technological warfare of the modern age. Each conflict painted a vivid, often horrifying picture of humanity's relentless drive to conquer, survive, and innovate. The scholars began their study in humanity's earliest recorded conflicts. Cave paintings and archaeological evidence revealed a pattern of tribal battles over resources, territory, and survival. Zarnal noted how even these primitive wars demonstrated a rudimentary sense of strategy and alliance building.
They fought not just for dominance,
He observed.
but for survival. This instinct shaped them from the beginning.
Vrakes countered.
But survival is universal. Why did humans evolve such an intense capacity for aggression compared to other species? Perhaps it is their unique combination of intelligence and emotional depth.
The team's exploration of the 20th century revealed a terrifying escalation: the industrialization of war. The First and Second World Wars showcased humanity's capacity for destruction on an unprecedented scale. The use of machine guns, tanks, and eventually nuclear weapons shocked the alien scholars. Kaelor, the tactical expert, analyzed the Battle of Stalingrad and the D-Day invasion, marveling at the sheer complexity and coordination involved.
Their ability to innovate under pressure is astounding,
He remarked.
but it's their emotional resilience that sets them apart. They endure unimaginable suffering yet continue to fight.
The use of nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a turning point in the scholar's study,
This is the pinnacle of human violence,
Zarnal said grimly.
to harness the power of the atom itself for destruction. And yet, the aftermath led to a global movement for peace and disarmament. Their duality is again on full display.
The scholars turned their attention to modern conflicts, which had shifted from large-scale wars to asymmetric and cyber warfare. They studied terrorist attacks, proxy wars, and the growing role of technology in combat. What stands out, Vrakes noted, is their adaptability. They no longer fight just with weapons, but with information and ideology. Their wars have become as psychological as they are physical. Kaelor pointed out another troubling trend: the rise of autonomous weapons and artificial intelligence in warfare.
They're beginning to delegate their violence to machines. This could make them even more dangerous, as it removes the emotional weight of killing.
After weeks of analysis, the team convened to discuss their findings. Zarnal presented a summary of humanity's history of conflict.
We have observed patterns that defy logic. Humans escalate violence to terrifying levels, yet they consistently seek to limit its impact through treaties and laws. They innovate weapons of mass destruction, but also create movements for disarmament. Their wars are driven by greed, fear, and hatred, yet also by ideals like freedom and justice.
Vrakes added,
Their contradictions may not be weaknesses, but adaptations. Their aggression ensures survival in times of danger, while their pursuit of peace allows them to build and rebuild.
Kaelor, ever the skeptic, voiced his concerns.
But their capacity for destruction cannot be ignored. If they brought these instincts to the galaxy, they could be as much a threat as the Eryndor Swarm.
As Zarnal continued his research, he stumbled upon an intriguing historical parallel. He noticed that humanity's greatest advancements often coincided with their darkest wars.
The space race, for example, was born from Cold War rivalries. The Internet, initially a military project, had become a tool for global connection. It is as if war drives their progress.
Zarnal said during a meeting.
But what would happen if they were exposed to a galactic conflict? Would their innovations uplift the galaxy or doom it?
The scholars' report to the Galactic Alliance grew increasingly complex. Humanity's history of conflict was both a warning and a testament to their potential. They had proven themselves to be brilliant tacticians, resilient survivors, and relentless innovators, but their propensity for violence and unpredictability remained a significant risk. As the scholars prepared to dive deeper into the catalysts for humanity's duality, they knew their mission had become more than an evaluation. It was a journey into the heart of a species that defied all expectations, a species that could hold the key to the galaxy's survival or destruction. While their research on war painted humanity as a brutal and relentless species, the scholars also began to uncover the other side of the coin, humanity's unyielding pursuit of peace. From grand gestures of diplomacy to quiet acts of kindness, the scholars saw a capacity for compassion and cooperation that rivaled even the most harmonious civilizations in the galaxy. Vrakes led the investigation into humanity's efforts to maintain peace and prevent conflict. The behavioral team focused on organizations like the United Nations, created in the aftermath of World War II. The scholars marveled at the sheer scale of its mission, bringing together representatives from nearly every nation on Earth to mediate disputes and promote global stability.
This is unprecedented,
Vrakes noted during a briefing.
even among the member civilizations of the Galactic Alliance. Such unity is rare. Humanity created this institution not out of prosperity, but from the ashes of their most devastating war. It is a testament to their resilience and hope.
Zarnal added,
Their greatest tragedies seem to inspire their greatest acts of cooperation. They do not simply endure, they strive to learn and grow from their suffering.
The scholars delved into the teachings of human philosophers, spiritual leaders and reformers. Figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and the Dalai Lama stood out as examples of humanity's commitment to nonviolence and reconciliation. Their messages of peace had transcended their own lifetimes, influencing generations across the globe.
What is fascinating,
Vrakes observed,
is how these individuals inspired change not through force, but through the strength of their ideals. They demonstrate that humanity's capacity for violence is matched by their capacity for moral courage.
The behavioral team also examined humanity's religious and spiritual traditions, many of which emphasized compassion, forgiveness, and unity. Yet even these systems were not without contradiction, as some had been used to justify wars throughout history.
It's another paradox.
Zarnal remarked.
Their systems of belief can unite millions or divide them just as easily. But their teachings of peace endure, regardless of how they are interpreted.
While the grand gestures of peace were impressive, the scholars also focused on the smaller, everyday acts of kindness that defined humanity. Through observation probes, they watched as strangers helped one another in times of need, a passerby rescuing an injured animal, neighbors supporting each other after a natural disaster, and communities coming together to rebuild after a tragedy. One particular incident stood out. A young boy in a war-torn village shared his meager food rations with an injured stray dog. The scholars were struck by the boy's selflessness, even in the face of scarcity and danger.
Such moments are not rare among humans,
Vrakes noted.
They demonstrate empathy even when it offers no tangible benefit. It is this empathy that allows them to form deep connections with one another and with other species.
The scholars also examined the sacrifices humans made in the name of peace. Peacekeepers placed themselves in dangerous situations to prevent conflicts, often risking their lives. Activists and whistleblowers faced persecution to expose injustices and protect others. Vrakes highlighted the story of a woman named Annika, who had organized protests against corrupt leadership in her country. Despite being imprisoned and tortured, she continued her work after her release, advocating for human rights and justice.
This determination is remarkable,
Vrakes said.
Humans are willing to endure great suffering for causes they believe in. Their resilience is not limited to war, it extends to their pursuit of peace as well.
However, the scholars noted that humanity's unity often came at a high cost. Alliances and treaties were fragile, frequently undermined by mistrust, political agendas, and cultural differences. Efforts for peace were often met with resistance, and progress was slow. Kaylor, ever the skeptic, pointed out the inherent instability of human peace efforts.
Their peace is always temporary. History shows us that even their most stable periods are punctuated by conflict. They cannot seem to sustain unity for long. Perhaps that is their nature.
Vrakes countered.
But even so, they continue to try. Their pursuit of peace is relentless, even in the face of failure. That is what makes them extraordinary.
As the scholars compiled their findings, a clearer picture of humanity emerged. They were a species of contradictions, capable of both unthinkable cruelty and profound compassion. Their capacity for violence was matched only by their yearning for peace, and their history was a testament to the eternal struggle between these two forces. Zarnal summarized their findings in a report to the team.
Humans are driven by a fundamental tension. They crave peace but seem to believe it must be earned through struggle. Their history shows that they are most united when faced with a common enemy. Yet, in the absence of such threats, they often turn against one another.
The scholars realized that this duality was not merely a flaw but an integral part of humanity's identity. It was what made them unpredictable, resilient, and capable of extraordinary achievements. As they prepared to present their findings to the Galactic Alliance, the scholars debated what they had learned. Were humans too volatile to be trusted? Or were their contradictions precisely what the galaxy needed in its fight against the Eryndor Swarm? Zarnal posed a final question to his team.
What if humanity's duality is not a weakness but a strength? Perhaps it is their very struggle between war and peace that makes them capable of understanding both and finding balance where others cannot.
This question would linger as the scholars moved forward, knowing that their mission had become more complex than they had ever anticipated. Humanity's contradictions were both a risk and a promise, and the fate of the galaxy might hinge on which side of their nature prevailed. With their research on humanity's history of war and peace in progress, the scholars sought a more direct way to evaluate humanity's potential as allies in the fight against the Eryndor Swarm. They devised a series of covert battle simulations designed to test human tactical skill, emotional resilience, and adaptability under pressure. These simulations, while synthetic, were crafted to mirror the chaotic conditions of galactic warfare. The simulations were to be conducted discreetly, targeting a carefully selected group of humans. Military personnel, war veterans, and strategic thinkers were recruited unknowingly, believing they were participating in high-tech, virtual training exercises funded by their governments. Among the participants was Jack Hayes, a retired soldier with an enigmatic past. The simulations were designed with escalating complexity. Scenario 1. Defensive strategies. Participants were tasked with defending a colony under siege from a simulated alien force. Resources were limited, and the attackers were relentless. Scenario 2. Coordinated assault. Participants led a multi-front assault against a heavily fortified enemy stronghold, requiring precise coordination. Scenario 3. Ethical dilemma. A hostage situation where participants had to choose between saving civilians or achieving a critical strategic objective. Zarnal, Vrayx, and Kalor observed from their cloaked vessel, analyzing the humans' decisions, strategies, and emotional responses in real time. The scholars were particularly interested in how humans balanced their aggressive tendencies with their moral and emotional considerations. In the first scenario, participants were thrust into a simulated battlefield, where they had to defend a vulnerable colony from waves of attackers. Most humans performed as expected, using basic defensive tactics and prioritizing the safety of civilians. Jack Hayes, however, stood out. Rather than focusing solely on defense, he orchestrated a counterattack, using the colony's limited resources in ways the simulation designers hadn't anticipated. He turned agricultural drones into improvised weapons and manipulated the terrain to create choke points.
What is he doing?
Kalor asked, watching Jack's unorthodox strategies unfold.
Improvising,
Vrayx replied, intrigued.
It's a hallmark of human ingenuity. They don't just follow rules, they rewrite them. Jack's team not only repelled the attackers, but also captured key assets, turning the tide of the battle. His methods, while risky, demonstrated an uncanny ability to adapt under pressure.
The second scenario required participants to lead a coordinated assault on an enemy stronghold. Most struggled with the complexity of managing multiple fronts, but Jack excelled. He delegated effectively, inspired his team, and used psychological tactics to destabilize the enemy. In one striking move, Jack feigned a retreat on one front, luring the enemy into an ambush he had prepared on another. The move was not only tactically brilliant, but also demonstrated his understanding of human psychology and how it could be leveraged against an alien opponent. Zarnal watched with a mix of admiration and unease.
He is a natural leader,
he said,
but his aggressiveness is tempered by strategic vision. He does not fight for the sake of destruction, he fights to win decisively.
The final scenario introduced a moral test. Participants were faced with a simulated hostage situation, where they had to choose between saving a group of civilians or completing a mission critical to the survival of their forces. Most participants hesitated, paralyzed by the weight of the decision. Jack, however, devised a plan that attempted to achieve both objectives. Using a combination of deception and precise timing, he successfully rescued the hostages while completing the mission. Though the plan was not without casualties, his ability to minimize losses impressed the observers.
He sees beyond binary choices,
Frakes noted.
where others see only two paths. He finds a third.
Kaler was less optimistic.
Look at the cost. Even his third path required sacrifices. His decisions may win battles, but they leave scars in himself and those he leads.
Throughout the simulations, the scholars also monitored the participants' emotional states. They found that humans, unlike many species in the Galactic Alliance, thrived under the emotional intensity of combat. Adrenaline, fear, and even anger seemed to sharpen their focus rather than hinder it.
Humans are unique in their ability to channel emotion into action.
Frakes observed.
But this also makes them volatile. Their emotions are both their strength and their weakness.
After the simulations concluded, the scholars reconvened to discuss their findings. The results were both promising and troubling. Humans demonstrated unparalleled tactical brilliance, creativity, and resilience. However, their emotional intensity and capacity for aggression made them unpredictable and potentially dangerous.
They could be our greatest asset against the Eryndor Swarm,
Kaler admitted.
But what happens after the war? Can we control a species so driven by their own instincts?
Frakes raised another point.
Their moral complexity is what sets them apart. They do not fight blindly, they fight for reasons they believe in. If we appeal to their sense of justice, they might become allies not because we command them, but because they choose to stand with us.
Zarnal, ever the historian, remained neutral but contemplative.
We must remember that humans are not a monolith. For every Jack Hayes, there are others who would wield their power irresponsibly. We must tread carefully.
As the scholars reviewed the simulations, Jack Hayes became aware of the alien influence behind the exercises. His intuition and observational skills led him to question the true purpose of the simulations. One night, while reviewing the data himself, he discovered subtle anomalies, patterns too advanced to be human-designed. His suspicions would soon set in motion a confrontation between the scholars and the very subject of their study, adding a new layer of complexity to the mission and raising questions about trust, ethics, and humanity's role in the galaxy. The battle simulations had revealed a great deal about humanity's potential as warriors. Their adaptability, resilience, and strategic ingenuity were unlike anything the Galactic Alliance had encountered. But one human in particular stood out, Jack Hayes. His uncanny ability to thrive under pressure, outthink opponents, and leverage limited resources made him a natural leader. Yet, his discovery of the truth behind the simulations would shake the very foundation of the scholars' mission. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The simulations were too advanced, too realistic to be mere government-sponsored exercises. During a review of the simulation data, he noticed anomalies, subtle irregularities in the algorithms, and patterns that hinted at non-human origins. His military training had taught him to trust his instincts, and they were screaming at him now. Using his technical skills, Jack hacked into the simulation's back-end systems. What he found left him stunned. Encrypted logs and hidden protocols referencing extraterrestrial design. The simulations weren't just advanced, they were alien. Jack pieced together enough information to confirm his suspicion that he and the other participants were being observed by an unknown external force. He confronted his closest teammate, Sarah, an engineer with a sharp mind and a knack for problem-solving.
"Something's not right,"
Jack told her, showing her the data.
"This isn't just training. Someone or something is watching us."
Sarah was skeptical at first, but soon came to the same conclusion. Together, they decided to dig deeper. even as Jack wrestled with the ethical implications of hacking into systems that were likely classified at the highest level. Meanwhile, aboard the cloaked alien vessel, the scholars debated their next steps. The simulations had proven humanity's potential as a secret weapon against the Eryndor Swarm. Jack Hayes, in particular, had demonstrated qualities that could make him a pivotal figure in the war effort.
He is exactly what we need,
Kaylor argued.
His creativity, his leadership. He could be the key to turning the tide against the Eryndor, but at what cost?
Frakes countered.
He is unpredictable. His emotional intensity could just as easily lead to chaos. If he turns against us, we could face a threat even greater than the Eryndor Swarm.
Zarnal, ever the voice of reason, suggested a middle ground.
We must engage with him directly. If he discovers the truth on his own, it could undermine everything. If we are transparent, we may earn his trust and gain insight into the human psyche that no simulation could provide.
Jack's relentless investigation eventually led him to a breakthrough. He intercepted a faint signal emanating from orbit, one that matched the encryption protocols he had uncovered in the simulation data. He and Sarah built a makeshift device to trace the signal. Using it to triangulate the source, the cloaked vessel detected the intrusion almost immediately.
He knows,
Frakes said, her voice tense.
He's found us.
Kaylor was alarmed.
We should leave. If he manages to breach our systems...
No,
Zarnal interrupted.
This is an opportunity. We have studied them from a distance, but now we must engage with them face to face. It is the only way to truly understand them.
The scholars made a fateful decision. They would reveal themselves to Jack and Sarah. Under the cover of night, the scholars projected a holographic avatar to Jack and Sarah as they worked in Jack's garage. The avatar, a neutral humanoid form designed to appear non-threatening, introduced itself as LX-72, the vessel's artificial intelligence. Jack reacted with a mix of shock, anger, and suspicion.
You've been spying on us,
he said, his tone accusatory.
What are you? And what do you want?
We are scholars,
LX-72 replied, its voice calm and measured.
We have come to understand your species. Your participation in the simulations has provided invaluable insight into your potential as allies in a larger conflict.
A conflict you didn't think to tell us about.
Jack shot back.
You're using us as guinea pigs.
Frakes, speaking through the avatar, addressed Jack directly.
We did not act out of malice. We needed to understand your capabilities before approaching you. The stakes are too high to risk failure.
Jack's skepticism didn't waver.
You're not telling me everything. What is this conflict? And why are we involved?
The scholars explained the situation.
The Eryndor Swarm, a bioengineered species that had turned on its creators, was ravaging the galaxy. The Galactic Alliance was losing ground, and humanity's unique qualities, its adaptability, ingenuity, and emotional resilience had caught their attention.
You see us as a weapon,
Jack said, his voice cold.
Something to be used and discarded.
No,
Zarnal interjected.
We see you as a potential ally, but we also see the risks, your duality, the very thing that makes you extraordinary, makes you unpredictable. We needed to understand you before we could approach you.
Jack stared at the hologram, his mind racing. He felt both betrayed and intrigued. The idea of humanity playing a role in an intergalactic conflict was overwhelming. But it also ignited something deep within him, a sense of purpose, of belonging to something greater. After hours of tense conversation, Jack made his position clear.
If you want our help, you need to trust us. No more experiments. No more secrets. You tell us everything, and we decide what role we play in this.
The scholars agreed. Knowing they had no choice, Zarnal saw in Jack a leader who could bridge the gap between humanity and the Galactic Alliance, but also someone who could challenge the Alliance's assumptions about his species. As the hologram faded, Jack turned to Sarah.
This isn't just about us anymore. If they're telling the truth, the whole planet needs to know.
What neither Jack nor the scholars realized was that their partnership would soon be tested in ways none of them could predict. The Eryndor Swarm was closer than anyone had anticipated, and the decisions made in the coming days would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the galaxy itself. The scholars had revealed the existence of the Eryndor Swarm to Jack and Sarah, and the weight of this revelation began to sink in. The Eryndor Swarm, described as a relentless and adaptive bioengineered species, was a nightmare that humanity's most dystopian science fiction could hardly envision. Jack found himself torn between skepticism and a growing sense of responsibility. The truth, however, was far more complicated than the scholars had let on. In their briefing to Jack and Sarah, the scholars presented a vivid projection of the swarm's destruction. Holograms filled the garage, showing images of planets reduced to wastelands and civilizations fleeing before an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Zarnal narrated, with grim gravity.
The Eryndor Swarm was born of arrogance. It was a bioengineering project gone awry, meant to create an efficient labor force and organic technology. But its creators underestimated the swarm's ability to evolve. They broke free of control, adapting at a speed no technology could counter.
And now they consume everything in their path.
Frakes added.
The Galactic Alliance has fought valiantly, but the swarm learns from every encounter. Each battle makes them stronger. Our defenses are failing.
Jack crossed his arms, his jaw tight.
And you think we're the solution? That humanity, with all its flaws, can succeed where the rest of the galaxy failed?
Kaylor, the tactical scholar, responded bluntly.
Yes, your species is unlike any we have encountered. Your unpredictability and ingenuity could disrupt the swarm's adaptive strategies. But it's a gamble, and we know the risks.
After the briefing, Jack and Sarah retreated to discuss what they had learned. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, was skeptical.
Jack, we don't even know if they're telling the whole truth. What if this is just a way to manipulate us into fighting their war?
Jack shared her doubts, but couldn't ignore the growing feeling in his gut. The sense that this was bigger than just a clever manipulation.
If they're right, Sarah, this isn't just their war. If the swarm reaches us, Earth won't stand a chance. We have to at least consider the possibility that this is real.
Sarah frowned.
But why us? Why not just give us their technology and let us figure it out on our own?
That's the thing,
Jack said, staring into the distance.
I don't think they trust us. Not yet. They're afraid of what we might become if we get involved.
Meanwhile, aboard the cloaked alien vessel, Zarnal unearthed a troubling truth. As he continued his analysis of the Alliance's records, he stumbled upon classified documents detailing the origins of the Eryndor Swarm. The swarm, it turned out, wasn't just a bioengineering experiment. It was created as a weapon by an advanced Alliance member, a desperate bid to maintain dominance in the galaxy. Zarnal confronted Vraex and Kaylor with the revelation.
The Eryndor Swarm is the Alliance's own doing. They sought to create the perfect soldiers, but they lost control. And now they want to use humanity to clean up their mess.
Kaylor's expression darkened.
This changes nothing. The swarm is still a threat, and we still need humanity to stop it.
But it changes everything.
Zarnal shot back.
We are not just asking them to fight a war. We are asking them to fix a problem we created. And if they discover this truth, they may turn against us.
As tensions mounted, an unexpected event forced everyone's hand. A scout swarm of Eryndor organisms, smaller than the main hive but no less lethal, emerged near Earth's solar system. The scholar's vessel detected the incursion immediately.
The swarm is here,
LX-72 reported.
Preliminary analysis suggests a scouting party, likely sent to evaluate Earth's defenses.
The news sent a ripple of urgency through the team. Jack and Sarah were brought aboard the vessel for the first time, their skepticism replaced by shock at the scale of the alien technology surrounding them.
This is real,
Sarah whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the holographic displays showing the swarm's approach. Jack clenched his fists.
What's the plan?
Kaylor presented a strategy.
Intercept the scout swarm before it could send data back to the main hive. Failure to do so would ensure Earth's discovery and eventual destruction.
Jack agreed to lead a strike team, composed of human participants from the earlier simulations. The scholars provided advanced weaponry and tactical support, but the mission would rely heavily on human ingenuity. As Jack prepared for battle, Zarnal pulled him aside.
You need to understand something,
Zarnal said.
This is not just a fight for your planet. If you succeed, you will prove that humanity is capable of more than we ever imagined. But if you fail...
We won't fail,
Jack interrupted, his voice steady.
We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species out there that your alliance failed to protect.
The strike team engaged the scout swarm in the asteroid belt, where the lack of planetary interference allowed for more flexibility in tactics. The Eryndor scouts were fast, adaptive, and relentless. But Jack's leadership shone. He coordinated his team with precision, using asteroid debris as cover and baiting the swarm into traps. When the swarm began to adapt, Jack employed an unconventional strategy. He ordered his team to create chaos. Erratic maneuvers, unpredictable tactics, and deliberate mistakes confused the swarm's algorithms, preventing it from learning effectively. Vrakes observed the battle from the vessel's command center.
This is why we need them,
she said.
No other species could fight like this.
They thrive in disorder. The battle was hard fought, and casualties were heavy. But Jack and his team managed to destroy the scout swarm before it could transmit data. The victory was bittersweet. Earth was safe for now, but the cost was a reminder of the swarm's relentless power. As the strike team returned to Earth, Jack looked at Sarah, his expression grim.
"This was just a scouting party,"
he said.
"The real war hasn't even started."
Back aboard the alien vessel, the scholars faced a growing divide. Zarnal argued that humanity deserved the full truth about the swarm's origins. Kaylor and Vrakes, however, feared that such transparency could backfire, alienating their only hope for victory.
"We need them focused on the fight,"
Kaylor insisted.
"not distracted by questions of blame."
"But if we continue to deceive them,"
Zarnal countered,
"we risk losing their trust entirely. They are not tools. They are people. We must treat them as such."
The debate would come to a head in the chapters to follow, as Jack, Sarah, and humanity grappled with their role in a galactic war that was far more complex and morally fraught than they had ever imagined. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment if you would like to see part 2. If you enjoyed this video, you will love this one.